Welcome to the WPOG podcast. Today, we're joined by Reynold Hoover, retired Lieutenant General and 1983 West Point graduate. Hoover has held various senior civilian roles within the U.S. federal government and leadership positions in the U.S. military, leading the United States through some of the most complex logistics operations. Now, the CEO of LA28, the organizing committee for both the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Los Angeles. Hoover oversees the planning, delivery, and execution of the Games. Please enjoy this episode with our host, Jamie Enos.
Reynold, thank you so much for being on the WPOG podcast today. I know everybody is so excited about you and the LA28 coming here to the States, Olympics, biggest event, just going to bring all this energy.
Yeah, Jamie, thanks so much for having me, and it's great to be back with my rock-bound Highland home.
I was looking through some things, and I saw your impressive military career. Of course, we can't not start with that. And active duty Army, National Guard veteran, Lieutenant General, retired. You were a deputy commander over in Northern Command at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. And I also saw that you gave a little speech in 2017 to the cows for affirmation.
Oh, yeah, at the Air Force Academy. Totally forgot about that.
To the exchange cadets. But yeah, you were active there too. So you've always had your hand given back to West Point. And you were also just recently a speaker here at MCLC, which is the McDonald's Conference for Leaders with Character. You were the keynote speaker here.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What did you say?
Well, first of all, the most important thing that you left off, and I'm not sure if I should say this now or not, but it has been declassified so I can talk about it. But
oh no,
I was the Easter Bunny on the South Lawn of the White House one year. So
no, really?
Yeah. So I won't tell you what year, but there's probably photos out there on the web somewhere of it. Yeah,
that is
there
amazing.
are sleuths out there that could probably find the picture. So, but we'll put that challenge out there.
Is that on the resume when you apply for LA?
No, it's not. I don't. Yeah. Only on occasion can we talk about the Easter Bunny years.
That is okay. Thank you for the unknown fact. That's fantastic. I don't know if that has been spilled before, but I
only to 300 of my closest friends.
That's great. That's great.
No, listen, it is really important to me to give back to the future generation, our future leaders. And that's why coming back to West Point and talking to the conference there, and then doing the affirmation event up at the Air Force Academy and other places gives me an opportunity to really just talk to our future leaders. I mean, these are I don't want to say kids, but these are the young adults who will be the leaders of the future. And it is so important that all of us that have the opportunity to just be able to give back to them, because they're the ones that are going to take care of us and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren going forward. It's really important.
Absolutely. And, your background, military, right? FEMA, huge similarities, I would think, between running them, all of the things that you did there, and then running the Olympic Games that are coming up and getting this organized here. Building trust, I would think, is probably one of the hardest things you got to do with all these different stakeholders and influencers that are coming into this pot of just mixing and kind of collaboration that you've got going on. How do you do that?
One of the things that I learned a long time ago and somewhere in my military career was the importance and power of relationships. And that has been key to my position here as the Chief Executive Officer at LA28 for the Olympics and Paralympic Games. And it is building relationships across all stakeholder groups, across delivery partners, across the federal government, across the local community here in LA. I was a rookie coming into LA here. I thought LA was LA. I had no idea there are 88 cities within the county of LA. It's just not LA. And so, developing a relationship with all of those folks and the community leaders, and then all of the delivery partners. So this will be the biggest games ever in the history of the Olympics. We have 36 sports with the addition of boxing, which reminds me of plebe boxing back in the day.
Yeah.
But, the IOC just added boxing to the games. And so we have 36 sports, but each of those sports has an international sports federation that we have to deal with. Those international sports federations are the ones that set the rules for athlete participation, They tell us what the field of play has to look like. They tell us what kind of equipment we have to have. They bring in the officials. They actually approve our venue selections for their particular sport. They're the ones that actually put the sport on. We're really just like the franchisee that puts everything in place. But then on top of that, there's 206 countries that are part of the IOC. Each one of those countries have national governing bodies for each of the sports that they participate in. So in the US, think USA Swimming, USA Basketball, USA Triathlon. Now multiply that times 206 for each of the sports that are in the summer games. So we have to deal with all of them. They select their athletes that's going to represent them, their sport in the games. So we deal with all of those national governing bodies. And then each of those 206 countries have national Olympic committees. Think of USOPC in Colorado Springs, right? The Olympic and Paralympic, US Olympic and Paralympic Committee. They're the ones that bring the team to the game. So Team USA, Sarah Hirschlin is the CEO at USOPC. She's responsible for bringing Team USA to Paris, to Milano Cortina for the Winter Games coming up in 26, to LA in 28. So we have to deal with all of those people as well. So those are just some of the stakeholders, that you have to build relationships with. And it is really one of the unlock keys is you think about trying to put all of these things together and really something that I learned over the years. It's better to trade a business card now rather than when things are breaking bad in the middle of the planning effort or when the games are being delivered. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And the military, right, that thrives on that, the fitness, the discipline, the teamwork, and that rolls right into the Olympic motto, right? Like higher, faster, stronger. And then they threw in
That's right.
together, right? They added that into that. So putting that all together, higher, faster, stronger together, that motto. How do you foster that similar culture within your team for LA28?
Yeah, it is really interesting. So one, I had no idea the size and scope of what I was getting into. I mean, the truth of the matter is a year ago, I was home on the couch. I wasn't looking for a job. I got an email out of the blue that said, "Hey, we're looking for the CEO of LA28. Admiral Mullen gave us your name." I didn't even know Admiral Mullen knew who I was. I was a one-star when he was the chairman.
That black book got opened up, huh?
I guess. "Hey, would you like to talk to us?" And I showed my wife. I'm like, "Hey, look at this. They want to talk to me about the Olympics." And she's like, "Oh, they'll never pick you." And so I had really no idea other than I was at this Winter Games in Salt Lake City. I helped coordinate all the military EOD support so that was my really only exposure to the Olympics and the Olympic movement. So I had no idea really what I was kind of getting into. Next thing I know, I'm the dog that caught the car. And in many ways, LA28 is like a startup company with really great experts who've never done it before and the visibility of like a Fortune 100 corporation, right? And so when I walked into the job, we had about 150 people on the staff. We're now at about 250. By the end of the year, we'll be at 500. By the time the games come, we'll be over 4,000 people just on our staff to run the games. And so when you talk about how do you kind of infuse that enthusiasm, I go back to the military training, right? When you come into a command, you look at the organization, you assess what you have, you assess the talent, you make sure you've got the right people in the right places, you'll look at the organization. And then we went to Paris. I went to Paris and that was kind of like my PDSS, my pre-deployment site survey, right? With my key leaders, kind of figuring out, well, what are they doing? How are they doing the mission now?
Right.
And then, so learned a lot there and realized that it really comes down to three things, I think: ops, plans, and logistics. And so if you get those three things right, the rest will kind of fall into place. But as we build the team here, it is really important. First of all, the one thing that I think the moment you walk into our offices, you get the feeling of this is really the Olympics and this is really cool. Everybody is motivated and wants to be here. And because they see the power of the Olympic movement. And so it's really easy to motivate a team that's already motivated. But then we've got Olympic and Paralympic athletes who are here on our team, and you realize, I mean, they're the ones that we do this for. At the end of the day, it's for them. And you realize how special they are and how important that is. And so really, for me, I have the corner office, but I know really people are doing the hard work, and it's going out. It's just back to basic leadership principles and appreciating them, meeting them where they are, taking time to just talk to them and communicate and celebrate everybody's piece of delivering the games.
I imagine the expectations are high too, because LA, having been a host city before, and then coming out of Paris, everybody was mesmerized at the
Yeah.
success of that. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how are you
Yeah.
battling that, and how are you setting that bar higher?
Yeah,
'Cause
that's a
you
really great
talked about this
question.
in interviews before, where you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
we got to set the high. Everybody's moving the bar to get over
That's
it.
right.
But you know, you got to have the fitness to also jump over it. So how are you
Yeah.
guys doing that out there?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, in
Can
a
you give us
lot
a
of
little
ways. Well,
teaser?
first of all, we don't have the Eiffel Tower,
Right.
but we've got Venice
You got the
Beach.
beach.
We've got beaches. We can put real volleyball on real beaches, and we'll
Yeah.
do that in Long Beach where beach volleyball will be. But in Venice, we'll have triathlon. We'll be on Venice Beach, and we've got some really exciting announcements coming up with regard to Paralympics and Venice, and the marathon will start down there at Venice Beach. The road cycling course will start at Venice Beach, and so we've got iconic venues. When you think about this Olympics, it'll be the biggest ever. We expect somewhere around 15 million people will come to LA. We have about 15,000 athletes that will come. We have iconic venues. So, for example, the Coliseum, right, will be the only venue in the world to host 3 times a Summer Olympics, right? But here's the thing a lot of people don't maybe remember about the Coliseum. It was actually built in 1923. It was built by the city of LA as a memorial to the World War I veterans. And that's why it's the LA Memorial Coliseum, right? The Rose Bowl is over 100 years old, which will be a part of it, right? And so the iconic venues that we have here, and then spectacular sporting venues like down in Inglewood, where the Rams play and the Chargers play, right? SoFi Stadium, Intuit Dome, the most state-of-the-art venues that you could ever imagine, yeah? The Inglewood Stadium, for example, will be the largest indoor competition swimming pool in Olympic history. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
With the ticket sales that we have will be the equivalent of about 4 seasons of Dodger Stadium.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about, there's no other place in the world like LA with the diversity and the culture and the food and the people to host a games of this magnitude and this size and this spectacular. And we've got Hollywood, right? I mean, just look at our handover ceremony when we with Tom Cruise, right? And Snoop, right? I mean, it will be fantastic. But here's the thing. I was doing a Q&A with our athlete fellows. So Janet Evans, right? 5 Olympic gold medalist and world record holder. She's our chief athlete officer. So she started a program of athlete fellows for Olympic and Paralympic athletes who are now retired. We bring them on as fellows. We give them skill training and jobs, and then hopefully we transition them to full-time work here at LA28. And one of the athletes, great athletes, who's been part of our program is Greg Louganis, right? Probably the greatest diver in Olympic history in the world. Incredible story. He's just an incredible human being. And he asks me, he said, hey, Reynold, when the games are over, and the cauldron's out, everybody's going home, what do you want your legacy to be? And I had never really thought about that question. You think of Peter Uberoff here in 84, he became the commissioner of baseball. You think of Mitt Romney, became the governor, right? And became a senator, ran for president. I have none of those ambitions. I got a little choked up about it. Then I came back and I said, after I recovered a little bit, and I said, I just want them to say job well done at the end of the day. We want to put on the best games ever. I have, however, since then, I have kind of revised my, how are we going to make it fantastic? And how do we raise the bar? Like, what is the legacy? My personal legacy? I think my personal legacy now is that Cindy Hook, who was my counterpart in Brisbane for the 32 Summer Games, she's going to say, what the hell are we going to do now?
Yeah.
Because that's all we got out of
Drop the
Paris was,
challenge.
what are you guys going to do? How are you going to top it?
Right.
So I think that to me is really going to be success. But people are going to come to LA. They're going to experience an incredible Olympic Games and the best games ever.
Yeah. It's exciting. Surprising thing that you have come up against here in this role, like in LA, because I would imagine every day the new thing around the corner is like, oh, whoops. And especially you're running kind of almost two simultaneous events taking place with the Olympics and the Paralympians competing. So
Yeah.
what is like the,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we've got to make sure that we're tracking this.
Yeah, Jamie, I think the surprising thing for me as an outsider to the Olympics, really, and the Olympic movement coming into it, is the size and scope and magnitude of putting on something like this. I mean, it is the equivalent of 7 Super Bowls a day,
Right.
for like 30 days straight. Yeah. And so when you think about that, and you're right, it's not just the Olympics, but the Paralympics. And so this will be the first time that LA will host the Paralympics. It'll also be the largest Paralympic Games ever held in the movement. We added another sport. We added paraclimbing to the program card, and so that's going to be a really super exciting event. But I think that for me, the most exciting thing or the surprise is, again, just the size, scope, and magnitude of all of the things that go into the planning and delivery and fan experience and athlete experience, and from the athlete village, which will be UCLA, and how we manage that, and to how we're going to manage Trestles Beach, which is where surfing will be, and everything in between. How do we move people? How do we feed people? How do we make sure that the timing is right for every sport and we meet all of those requirements? How do we sell tickets? It is amazing. We have a $7.1 billion budget to break even. We don't get federal funding. United States is the only country that doesn't fund its Olympic and Paralympic athletes, nor does it fund the hosting of the games. And so all of our money comes from sponsorship and commercial partners to be able to do this. And it's probably the hardest problem set I've ever encountered.
Organizing it is not an Olympic sport in and of itself. If you had to, what do you think you would have competed in? Well, if you were an Olympic athlete, what would you have? I think what did you scuba at West Point when you were a cadet?
Yeah, I taught scuba, but I don't think that's an Olympic sport
Yeah,
yet.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
yeah, it was.
deep water
I don't even know if
diving.
it's still around. The scuba instructor group. I don't even know if that still exists. Yeah, and up in Delafield Pond.
Well, that's drained. That is, that had a leak, so that's no more. But
there's probably some lost masks and weight belts down in the bottom of the
under the muck. Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up playing soccer. I was a goalie, and then late in life, I played a little bit of rugby. Hard to say. I think they're all amazing sports, but if you had to pick one, maybe it might be one of the 10 sailing disciplines, right? So in the sport of sailing, there's 10 different disciplines of the sport, right? But when you think about sailing, it's tactics. And if you're on a team, there's a little bit of teamwork there. It is dealing with the unknowns of just kind of Mother Nature, if you will, the water currents, the wind speeds and things like that. And there's speed involved in it.
And the Army guy picks the Navy sport.
The Navy, right? Yeah. How about that? When I was a cadet, our sailing team used to routinely beat Navy in sailing.
Oh, well, okay. There we go.
Yeah. Especially when they came up to try to sail on the Hudson, they couldn't figure it out.
Well, it's very difficult with
look,
currents
rugby,
and weather
amazing.
pattern.
Look,
it's not Annapolis.
The other is rugby. It was amazing. I was at Rugby Sevens. I was at the first men's event. I didn't get to any of the other events, but we've got Sammy Sullivan on the women's rugby team, amazing athlete. I got a chance to meet her after they won. And so just amazing. Rugby, I think, would be a very close.
That's a brutal sport, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and our West Pointers, like you mentioned, Sammy Sullivan, they have a long history with the Olympic Games, and Sammy most recently in Paris and winning bronze with the women's rugby squad there. Super proud of that, of course. I know we have a few current cadets, I think, that are also eyeing some spots in 2028, maybe with some women's lacrosse, the new breakout
Right?
sport
We
as
added
well.
lacrosse.
We'll
Yep.
we'll keep our fingers crossed for some of them, see if they show up on a roster, maybe even some coaching. We'll see what happens if that transitions over there. But one of my favorite spots here at West Point is the Olympic alcoves over in Arvin, which is a really inspiring location as well. And then the West Point Museum, of course, has a lot of things that they pull out and put on displays and to honor everybody and bring back the history as well. But the Olympians are a very, very close knit group, and I know that you had the opportunity to meet up with a couple of them out in Paris. So, how have they been welcoming you to the group? And
I got to say that the Olympic and Paralympic athletes are what inspires me. And when I went to Paris, I saw a lot of events, but there were very few that I actually saw from start to finish, right?
yeah,
Because I was really looking at back of house and operations and things like that. And oh, by the way, get to watch a particular match or whatever. And I will just say that when you watch the Olympic athletes and Paralympic athletes on the field of play, it gets in your heart. It really gets in your heart. And you realize that it doesn't matter what country they're from. Doesn't matter what sport it is. Everyone is cheering for them. It reminds me of West Point when we were the 12th man standing, watching Navy beat us every year in football, but we were still there cheering on the team, and we stood out of respect for the athletes on the field. And it is the same thing. When you see these athletes and they are giving it their all, it really, you understand the power of the movement, and you understand the power of the accomplishment that they did just to be on the field of play, right? And the sacrifices they made just to be on the field and compete. And the ones that really inspire me are those that get second place and come back and do it again. That was Greg Louganis.
yeah,
The first time he competed, he got silver. It wasn't until later he comes back and right. But there are others that have stumbled along the way or whatever, and they get back up and they get back in the field of play and they go and do it and they go for the gold. Those are the people that really inspire me. But you meet these incredible athletes and it's like, wow.
well, it's almost 3 years away, which is. Did you have a countdown clock to
It's
graduation?
1,156 in about
I
days.
knew it. It's like you can't ever lose that, right? Yeah. So it's just like counting down to graduation, right? And about
Yep,
days, right? You
that's right.
probably.
I always have to explain the but, when I do it in an audience and when I say a but, it's a portion of a whole.
That's perfect. Oh my goodness. How are you balancing that tradition here, West Point? We have so much tradition, but we also have a lot
Yeah,
of innovation, right? And
yeah.
and you're battling kind of, I bet, the same thing with the Olympic Games of the history of the Olympics and taking what was great and then reinventing or applying your new innovation. How are you trying to balance that tradition with innovation and planning LA?
Yeah, every day here we strive to what we say we're trying to collectively co-creating what's next. And that is what's next for the sport, what's next for the athlete, what's next for the fan experience, what's next for the community, what's next for the spectators and the Olympic family. And I think the best example I can give you is opening ceremonies. So on the 14th of July, 2028, we will do opening ceremonies in honoring the tradition of the 32 and the 84 games in the Coliseum. And then we will also do it in the stadium in Inglewood, right? And so we're honoring the past. At the same time, we are acknowledging the future of sport and the technology involved in that. And I think that is probably the greatest example of how we are meshing traditional sport with what's next and what can be next. I mean, it is something we think about all the time, is how do we take fan engagement and the athlete experience to that next level and still respect the movement and respect the sport and understand how people consume information, how people aren't necessarily just back in the day, we sat in front of the TV and watched. I mean, one of my most memorable sporting Olympic memories was the Miracle on Ice in 1980. I was a plebe. We were in the day room. We were allowed to go to the day room to watch the hockey match.
Right.
And when we won, we all got privileges. So that was a big moment for us, right? And it's something that has stuck with me forever, is that Miracle on Ice with 3 seconds. And the announcer, and I forget who it was, said, "Can you believe it? Do you believe in miracles?" At 3 seconds. And that scoreboard, by the way, one of those scoreboards is on display at USOPC headquarters in Colorado Springs at that 3-second moment. But, I think we do think about that every day, is how do we mesh tradition with the future of what's next to sport?
Yeah. It's a hard line, but we have to keep moving forward, and that's part of it, right? It's to push the envelope as well, to challenge ourselves and to challenge others around us.
And I would just say one of our more complex, so this is a no-build games. We're using all of the existing venues. So we're not building anything new permanent. As I said before, we're using all of our existing venues here in town. But in order to use the Coliseum, we have to build an overlay track, because the field of play is too small for track and field now. The seats were added into the bowl. And so one of our most complex builds, besides the indoor swimming pool down in Inglewood, actually there'll be 2 pools down there in that stadium, but will be a track overlay in the Coliseum that'll go probably 14 rows up into the stands, so that we can do actually athletics, track and field in the Coliseum again.
All elevated then over.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yep. An elevated platform.
Wow. And the engineering that's going to have to go behind that, right? Because it's not just running, it's all the events that are
That's
gonna have
right.
to go there. So
that's right.
Everything.
And down in Inglewood, we'll put 2 competition swimming pools in there, a warmer pool and a competition pool. But in order to do opening ceremonies there, we have to build a platform over the pool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like when you see those time-lapse films of like when they have the ice rink and then they put the floor down in the garden for basketball or something like that, but we're just going to multiply that, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And we're going to do that 6 times.
That's right.
So it's going to be incredible, the facilities. So it's a lot to manage. So we're going to be watching and cheering you on and the whole team. And what a positive way to showcase, like you said, LA, a lot of other features around the country as we get into the Olympics and the Paralympics and all the lead up events that go into that for the games coming.
It is the reason I came out of retirement and got off the couch, because on the 2nd of July, 1979, I took an oath on the plane at West Point, like many West Pointers before and after me have done, to a life of public service. And I couldn't think of a better way to capstone a career of over 35 years in uniform and another 4 as a cadet. So close to 40 years, to come back and unite the world around sport, and unite the nation around sport, and unite all of Angelenos and Southern California around sport movement. And when I went to Paris, I knew that I had made the right decision. And more importantly, as we think about, this is really the first time the United States has hosted Summer Games since Atlanta in '96. And so we wanted to make sure that this is America's games. And to that end, our torch relay will hit all 50 states. That's never been done before. And that is the thread that will bind the nation to LA. And we're really super proud about that too. But it is the reason I came out of retirement, is to unite the world at a time we need it the most around sport. And when you see it, it just gets in your heart. It really does. And we hope everybody comes to LA. It's going to be great.
Well, I have one more question for you, and that would just be talking to cadets and that little piece of advice or inspiration that you would have for them, because of course that's part of our heart and soul as well as our grads, is the cadets, especially those that are about to graduate and enter service. Do you have any words of advice for them?
Well, as somebody who graduated toward the bottom of my class, I'll say, do not worry. There's hope for all of us. More importantly, I would say, take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Do the best that you can. And remember all the people that helped get you to where you are, because you never know when, you're going to touch somebody's life, or your life will be touched and changed as a result of the path that you've chosen. And I just wish them all the best. So I think West Point was a really defining milestone in my life, and I think it is yours as well, as your cadets just see graduation just around the corner, or maybe you're a cow or yearling, even a plebe this year, and thinking about, geez, when I was a cadet, I never thought I would make a career out of it. I never thought that I would be a general, let alone a 3-star general. And I would just say, don't set your sights on that. Just set your sights on being in the moment and doing the best you can do in whatever job that is.
Reynold, I really appreciate this conversation. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you for all the insights, some of the secrets even behind for LA28. We hope that something else pops up, you'll think of us, and we wish you the best in all the planning, and you know that you always have the strength of the long gray line behind you.
Jamie, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And beat Navy for sure.
Always.
Thank you for listening to the WPAOG Broadcast Network. Please take a moment to rate and review the show and subscribe to automatically get updates on a new episode. Thank you for listening.